Hey guys, it's Laura. Welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to be sharing with you all the series that I completed in 2019. So I managed to finish a total of 7 series, which I think is pretty good. Most of the series I currently have open are ones that I'm still waiting on the next books to be published. So I think I'm doing a pretty good job with my series reading, although I do have around 3 series that I currently have open that have the books published already that I need to catch up on. So all in all, I think I did a pretty good job, and today I'm going to talk about the 7 that I did manage to complete. So the first series that I completed in 2019 was the Winter Night Trilogy. This is by Catherine Arden, and this consists of The Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch. So The Bear and the Nightingale I read back in 2018. I think I gave it a 3 stars. This was a book that I picked up because of a book club that I was running when I used to work at the bookstore. And it wasn't really a book that I was looking forward to per se, but it was a book that was very surprising. Like I've mentioned before, my reading taste have evolved so much by this point that I think if I had reread that today, I probably would have given it a much higher rating. So in 2019, I finished out the series with reading The Girl in the Tower and The Winter of the Witch, and I loved them both so much. The Girl in the Tower got a 4-star for me, and The Winter of the Witch got a 5 out of 5 stars. So this series, if you don't know, it follows a young girl named Vasilisa, or Vasya for short, and she lives in the Russian wilderness where it is winter for most of the year. She has this special gift in which she is able to see and communicate with the fae-like creatures and spirits that surround her village. A lot of people are aware of these household spirits. They leave offerings for them and they honor them. And in return, these spirits offer a level of protection for their home. However, after Vasya's mother dies and her father comes home with a new wife, who is a very devout Christian woman, she turns the family and the village away from leaving offerings and honoring those spirits, which actually leaves them open to a great threat that is coming, and Vasya has to defy the people that she loves in order to protect her family. And the series takes on so many twists and turns from there, but we get to grow up with Vasya, basically, see how she grows into herself, her womanhood, her power, and I just loved this series so much. Catherine Arden's writing is beautiful, lyrical, and also extremely atmospheric. You could feel the cold in your bones, and I think that this is just such a beautiful series. If you haven't picked it up yet, I do highly recommend it. I came to love Vasya as a character so much. She chooses to stand out and be different from women of her time. This is a time in Russia where women as little more than property. They only really have 2 choices, which is to be married off or to go to a convent. And Vasya wants neither of those things. She is spirited, she is wild, she wants freedom, and I just loved her spirit and her growth throughout this series. It's just so beautiful, and I'm so happy that I got to read this series this year. The next series that I managed to finish in 2019 is the Folk of the Air series, which consists of The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing, all by Holly Black. So I really don't need to say too much about this series. It is wildly popular, especially here on BookTube. I really ended up enjoying this series. The first book, The Cruel Prince, of course, I read in 2018 when it came out, and I wasn't that impressed with it, to be honest. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but the series just got better and better for me, and I am so glad that I continued on with it because The Wicked King got 4 stars. The Wicked King got 4 stars for me, and The Queen of Nothing got 5, and overall, I really enjoyed my time reading this series. I really enjoyed the characters, how ruthless and how determined Jude is as a character. I also loved the romance, the incredibly problematic hate to love, but mostly hate relationship that she had with Prince Carden. I just thought it was so intriguing. I loved it so much, not because it was beautiful or because it was so sweet, but because it was so messed up. It was just very entertaining to read. Overall, this series is just very entertaining, and I really enjoyed my time reading them. The next series that I completed in 2019 was The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. So I read all 4 of the books. I read Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. These are all a series of fairy tale retellings that are connected. It takes place in this sci-fi world, and in the first book, Cinder, we are following the Cinderella retelling in which our main character is a cyborg and finds out a pretty extreme secret about herself that ends up setting off a chain of events that carry on throughout the entire series. Cinder is a book that really surprised me. I did not anticipate loving it as much as I did, but when I read that book, I could not put it down. I was so intrigued from beginning to end. And to be honest, a lot of it was very predictable, but I still loved it so much and I just ate it up. I enjoyed the rest of the series as well, but Cinder will forever be my favorite. I kind of got disappointed with the very ending of Winter, but all in all, I am so glad that I read this series last year. It's one that people talk about all the time, and I'm really glad that now I know and can join the conversation. Next, I completed the first Aramis Bourne trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. This was my first time reading Brandon Sanderson, and I absolutely fell in love with his writing, with his world, with this series, and the magic system and the characters. Just absolutely everything about this blew me away. I'm really not going to talk too much about it because I know I've talked a lot about these, especially recently. They were on my top books of the year list, so check that out if you want to hear more of my thoughts. But I did binge this entire series this year, which includes Miss Bourne, The Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages. I still think that The Well of Ascension, the second book, is my favorite book in the series, but I loved the way this wrapped up overall. I don't think that prior to last year, I read a lot of adult high fantasy. So reading the series was such an eye-opening experience. I learned that I really need to dive more into adult fantasy, and I'm just so glad that I read these books because they mean so much to me. This series is one of my top favorite series of all time, and I'm just so glad that I decided to pick these up and read the entire series last year. Next, we have a duology, and that is The Wrath and the Dawn duology by Renee Ahdieh. This is a Arabian-inspired fantasy that is kind of a retelling of 1001 Nights. In this, we follow our main character, Shazi, decides to volunteer to become the bride of King Khalid, who none of his brides have lasted more than a night. He marries them, and the next day he kills them. And one of those brides that he kills is Shazi's best friend, and she decides that she is going to marry this king, and then she's going to kill him and take revenge for her friend. But instead, she ends up falling in love with him, and it's just such a beautiful fantasy romance. The subtle but very beautiful magic in here. I loved the world, I loved the setting, I loved these characters with my whole heart. And I just really, really enjoyed this. Of course, I read The Wrath and the Dawn and The Rose and the Dagger, which is the second book in the duology, and I just think they're both so, so good. Overall, this was a 4-star series for me. I'm super excited to read more from Renee Ahdieh because she has that very lyrical, very beautiful writing that I love so, so much, and I highly recommend these books if you have not picked them up yet. Another series that was in my top 10 favorites of last year that I have talked about a lot recently is The Nevernight Chronicles by Jay Kristoff. I binged this entire series this year, the first one being Nevernight, the second one being God's Grave, and the third one being Dark Dawn, and I loved these so much. This is another series that's extremely popular. We follow our main character, Mia Corvair, who is training to become an assassin so that she can get revenge on the people who harmed her family. Jay Kristoff's writing is one of the most unique writing styles that I've ever come across, and I absolutely adore his writing. I loved his wit, I loved his humor, I loved the footnotes, I loved these characters so much, I loved this world, loved everything about this series, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. I was so worried that these books weren't going to live up to the hype for me, but they totally, totally did. It's not something that I thought I would be into because it is an adult series that is very bloody, very gory, very explicit, but I ended up absolutely loving it. I gave all 3 books 5 stars. Yeah, I'm just so glad that I picked this up, and I'm so excited for absolutely everything that Jay Kristoff comes out with. in the future because he has definitely become an auto-buy-author for me. And the very last series that I completed in 2019 is another duology, and that is the Heart of Iron duology by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston became one of my favorite authors this year when I read Geekerella for the first time. I love that book so much. That book was so close to being on my top 10 list. This is her sci-fi series, and it is basically a Princess Anastasia retelling set in space, and it's so much fun. It's pure action. There's always something going on, but it doesn't take away from the character development or the setting or the world. It was just really, really fun to read and really heartfelt as well. The second book in the duology, Soul of Stars, is the one that I read this year, completing this duology. And this one had me emotional. I was crying. I was really feeling for these characters and what was going to happen. I loved the way that it all wrapped up, the way it ended. And I think that these are so underrated. I never see people reading them or hear people talking about them. And I feel like they are just as good as Geekerella and The Princess and the Fangirl. If you've read those and loved them, definitely check out Ashley Poston's sci-fi works because they're absolutely beautiful. And I feel like they all have very similar messages, knowing that you're not alone, of finding yourself, of found family, of heartfelt and emotional while still being really fast-paced, really fun, and really entertaining. And I just really love these books so much. They both got a 5 out of 5 stars for me, and I highly recommend picking them up. And that is it. Those are these 7 series that I completed in 2019. I'm hoping to up that number this year because there are a lot of series that I want to get through, and there are also, like I said, a few series that I'm still in the middle of, that I'm still working on, that I can definitely finish this year. So that is going to be it for today's video. Do let me know down in the comments below if you have any thoughts or opinions on the books that I talked about today. Let me know if you've read any of them or if you're looking forward to reading any of them this year. And I'm excited to see what this year is going to bring as far as series. Let me know some of the series that you need to catch up on. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos from me, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.